What's going on, fellow anime fans? Welcome to the very first episode of This Week in Anime, where we recap and discuss all the new anime episodes released within the past week. I watched all the popular, lesser known, and under the radar shows which aired from January 1st to January 8th, even ones I normally would not have been interested in, so that I can give you a better idea of everything the current winter 2022 anime season has to offer, and to help you decide which ones might be worth checking out for yourself. Don't worry though, I'll have similar genres grouped up into video chapters so you can skip to a specific section if you only care about shonen or slice of life, for example. And if you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, as I will have new anime videos at least once or twice a week from now on. Alright, without further ado, let's jump right into it with the first new show on our list today, In the Land of Leadale. In the Land of Leadale is a new fantasy adventure with comedic elements where the main character is overpowered. Now, I have not seen this tagged as an isekai, but here's a short description so you can decide for yourself. The protagonist Kana was stuck in a hospital bed on life support after a terrible accident, her only escape being a VR MMORPG. Since she spent all her time there, she was able to become stronger than almost anyone else in the game, and even built up a notorious reputation. One day she wakes up in the body of her game avatar, now able to freely move around, feel pain, and eat food, so she realizes she's fully inside this fantasy world, although a lot of things seem to have changed. If that sounds interesting to you, then I would say go check out the first episode. It's available to stream on Crunchyroll and VRV, new episodes every Wednesday. Personally, I did enjoy episode 1, but mostly for the comedic bits involving likable protagonist Kana. Now, it does seem like future episodes will lean more into the adventure and overpowered magic aspects, and I'm happy the show seems to avoid the shallow self-insert power fantasy trope. Despite the praise, there wasn't enough to make it stand out to me in the crowded anime landscape. So I'm giving In the Land of Leadale 7 out of 10 stars on the effort board, because that's the number of times I appreciated the comedy in an otherwise average episode 1. Next we have ORIENT, an alternate history fantasy shonen where demonic Kishin descended from the sky and took over old Japan. Bands of rebels called Bushi fought hard to defy their new overlords, but 150 years later they are still fighting a losing battle. Regular society has come to see the Kishin as benevolent deities, and propaganda teaches that the Bushi are criminals who started the war in the first place. Protagonists Musashi and Kojiro have dreamt of becoming Bushi ever since they were kids, and both have been training in secret for the day they can fight back against the oppressive demons. If you're a fan of classic shonen battle anime, you can watch ORIENT on Crunchyroll and VRV, also with new episodes on Wednesdays. In my opinion, the story has some potential, but I recommend waiting until there are 3 or 4 episodes available to watch. I definitely would not rewatch episode 1 if I had the choice. It's not terribly bad or anything, it just starts off on the wrong foot by seeming like another generic, soulless shonen anime. Nothing about it felt particularly new or exciting, and the writing wasn't good enough to make me care about the protagonists or the plot. Guys, normally I love shonen anime. I'm not saying that this show can't get better. It certainly could, and I'll be happy if it does, but the first episode just felt mediocre at best. None of it was memorable to me, so with that in mind, I'm rating my initial experience with ORIENT as 5 sticky white rice balls with no soy sauce out of 10. How bland! Up next, we have the strongest sage with the weakest crest. This is an action fantasy with an overpowered protagonist who reincarnates himself on purpose in hopes of one day surpassing his own limitations. The potential of everyone in this world is determined by the magical crest they are born with. Luckily, Matthias is reborn with the perfect crest he was hoping for, but in this new age, everyone believes it to be the weakest crest instead. Of course, this results in his new 12-year-old self surprising people with his vast knowledge and unique magic. Pretty standard for this type of show. If you want to check it out, new episodes air Saturdays on Crunchyroll and VRV. The Misfit of Demon King Academy is the closest show I could compare this to, but unfortunately the strongest sage has nowhere near the charisma of Anos Voldigod. At least in Anos' case, we got to meet his parents, who are endearing, likable people. But in this case, Matthias starts episode 1 alone and aged up. We don't get to see any of his prior relationships or family. I'll be honest, I did enjoy this first episode a little bit more than Orient, but that's mostly due to my own preferences. There's just something about seeing an overpowered protagonist outskilling people with surprised Pikachu faces that I still find entertaining no matter how many times I see it. Oh, and because the first 30 seconds of the episode show him spell nuking a dragon, that was way cooler than anything Orient did. Despite those two things, this show still falls victim to feeling soulless and generic. The protagonist has no personality, and we had no time to get to know him. Most of the episode just focuses on how much better he is at magic casting compared to other people. It just ends up feeling like an empty power fantasy. There were several moments where I found myself annoyed at how jarringly fast the pacing felt, so I looked into it, and it turns out they crammed the whole first volume of source material into this one episode while skipping all of the world building and exposition. Production choices like that are almost never a good sign, so I'm giving the first episode of The Strongest Sage with the Weakest Crest 6 Everstones from Pokemon out of 10, because I highly doubt this show will be evolving anytime soon. Alright guys, now we're moving into more sci-fi and non-adventure fantasy. I'm sorry if I was too harsh on the previous two entries, but this next one should more than make up for it. I finally get to talk about one of my favorites out of the 2022 winter season, and that is Tokyo 24th Ward. This show is an action-packed sci-fi mystery with a special double-length first episode, and man, it flew by quickly. I had absolutely no expectations going in, yet I was immediately hooked by the serious, mature tone of the story. The double-length first episode is centered around 3 friends dealing with the death of a girl they were very close to. Filled with feelings of guilt and grief, they each look for their own way to move on. A year after the incident, they run into each other at the memorial service, and all 3 get a phone call from their supposedly dead friend. The strange call contains a warning about an upcoming disaster which they might be able to prevent if they act fast. And this is when the sci-fi mystery kicks in and the action ramps up quickly to an edge-of-your-seat climax. This show really has it all. Interesting and intelligent characters, great dialogue, great character design, and genuinely mature themes like police oppression, political corruption, and dealing with the death of a loved one. Plus, the protagonist gets to run up walls and jump over buildings. I mean, who doesn't love that? If any of that sounds interesting, I highly recommend checking out Tokyo 24th Ward for yourself. It's available on Crunchyroll, Funimation, and VRV with new episodes on Wednesdays. I enjoyed every moment of this double-length first episode, and I truly believe this one is of standout quality in the current anime season. For those reasons, I'm giving my initial experience with Tokyo 24th Ward a 9 out of 10, because that's the ratio of friends I would recommend it to if only I had that many. Next, we have Miss Kuroitsu from the Monster Development Department. Now, I kind of had trouble deciding where to put this show because on one hand it's a workplace comedy, but on the other hand it's definitely a fantasy with monster girls, superheroes, and supervillain societies. I decided it did not fit with the upcoming non-fantasy slice of life shows, so I'm putting it here. As far as the description, it's just like the title says. The protagonist Miss Kuroitsu works in the Monster Development Department of an evil organization bent on world domination. I say it's a workplace comedy because most of it takes place in Miss Kuroitsu's lab as she and the doctor work themselves ragged to keep up with the demands of their supervillain superiors. Either that or she's giving PowerPoint presentations trying to pitch their next monster idea to the board, and that idea either gets rejected for being terrible or it fails spectacularly when they try to create it. I enjoyed this first episode well enough, mostly because the type of comedy is self-aware and almost fourth wall breaking. They took real Power Ranger style superheroes that air on Japanese TV and incorporated them into the lore, where this supervillain society is tracking their movements and plotting to defeat them. I think my favorite line so far is when Miss Kuroitsu's newest creation malfunctions during a fight with a local superhero, and she yells, "That wasn't a bug, it was a feature." Yeah, this moment was a whole meme and I was actually laughing out loud. If you like shows with a sense of humor similar to Gintama, you can stream it on Crunchyroll and VRV with new episodes every Saturday. I'm giving Miss Kuroitsu from the Monster Development Department a 7 out of 10 chance this season that every malfunction with the Monster Girls will be a wardrobe malfunction. Next, we have the only show on today's list which I regret watching, and that's Girls Frontline. I've also seen it titled Dolls Frontline. This is a military sci-fi action anime based on a mobile game, where squads of female androids run around shooting other squads of female androids. Normally, I would have never watched this, but for the sake of this video, I really did try to give it a fair shot. Unfortunately, I found myself tuning out from the bare bones plot and cardboard characters. They even reuse multiple animated shots as background filler during the exposition dump at the start. You can see the exact same shots used at different points later on. I feel like most people who like this show are watching it because they played the game. And if you like Girls Frontline, feel free to tell me what you like about it in the comments. But personally, I found no value in the 24-minute runtime besides the opening theme, which is unironically a bop. So if you're interested, I'll have the OP linked in the description below. If you haven't played the mobile game, I recommend you skip Girls Frontline. And I'm giving it a generous 2 out of 10 chance I would watch any more episodes. Speaking of girls with guns, we've got our first entry in the Slice of Life section coming up next. Police in a Pod is another anime I normally would have skipped this season. The police theme sounded boring, and I tend to avoid slice of life unless it's a romantic comedy. But I ended up really enjoying this first episode, and it made me glad I decided to make this video because otherwise I would have missed out. Made by the legendary studio Madhouse, Police in a Pod is about a rookie cop named Kawai who hates her job and is about to hand in her resignation when her sergeant gets replaced by a beautiful woman. Kawai decides it might not be so bad to stay a little longer, and is pleasantly surprised when her new boss turns out to be a badass with great detective skills and a sailor's mouth who doesn't take crap from criminals. It's important to note that this show is a seinen in addition to the comedy and slice of life tags. Seinen anime are usually targeted towards a more adult audience compared to regular anime, and I could definitely feel that influence coming through. There are some great one-liners like people calling the cops pigs, or in the case of the new sergeant, pretty as a porn star. And it's a great honest look at how cops deal with being hated by civilians on a daily basis. Police work is so different in Japan because their crime rates and types of crimes are generally lower than here in the States. So if you're interested in a comedic look into the daily life of a female cop in Japan, I highly recommend this show. Police in a Pod is available to stream on Funimation every Wednesday, and I'm giving the first episode 8 piggy piggies out of 10 whole respect for our girls in blue. Up next, we have another seinen anime targeted slightly more for adults, and that is My Dress Up Darling. My Dress Up Darling is the second show on today's list from Cloverworks Studio. They made Tokyo 24th Ward, but they also made fan favorites like Darling in the Franxx and Bunny Girl Senpai. So with that in mind, you should already know we are in for a quality treat. Now, I personally have a nitpick with how Crunchyroll decided to present this show. If you were scrolling past it and judged your interest solely on the cover image, nobody could blame you if you assumed it was just a girly show about dresses and makeup. It's funny because this show kind of is about those things, but judging by the fan service I saw, it's definitely for a male audience. My Dress Up Darling is about a high school boy named Gojo, who grew up with his grandfather running a professional Japanese Hina doll shop. Gojo became enthralled with the family business at an early age, spending all his time learning how to craft, paint, and sew new clothes for the dolls. Unfortunately, his classmates made fun of him for this seemingly feminine hobby. So ever since then, he's been keeping it a secret. One day, a beautiful, popular girl in his class discovers this secret, but instead of making fun of him, she shares a secret of her own. Personally, I really enjoyed this one, but that might be because I have a weakness for this particular type of romance anime. I loved Princess Jellyfish back in 2010, if that tells you anything. But if slightly more mature, slice-of-life rom-coms are your style, or if you're interested in the art and craft of cosplay, I have a strong feeling that My Dress Up Darling will deliver on all those points this winter season. You can stream new episodes every Saturday on Crunchyroll and Funimation. And finally, I'm giving this show an 8 out of 10 prediction for the minimum number of upskirts we'll be getting by the end of Season 1. The last two shows on today's list are on some cavity-inducing levels of sweetness. But if you're not into wholesome, heartwarming, slice-of-life anime, I promise I get it, you can feel free to skip to the next section. For those of you that stayed, I'm here to tell you about two of the purest shows I've seen in a long time, Slow Loop and Akebi's Sailor Uniform. Slow Loop is about a young girl named Hiyori who is nervous to meet her new stepdad, so she visits the one place she feels most comfortable, the ocean. When a curious girl named Koharu shows up, Hiyori decides to teach her how to fish, just like Hiyori's real dad taught her before he died. But after Koharu reveals she's meeting her new stepmom that same evening, the girls realize their chance friendship is about to reach a whole new level. Now, I don't have too much to say about this one, but that's only because I believe the value here is in the experience of watching this type of show. There's so much bad stuff out in the world, so much negativity on the internet. But when I watch a show like Slow Loop, I can forget about all that. I can just relax and soak in a few precious moments of peace. So if you need a dose of feel-good wholesomeness administered straight to the heart, I highly recommend you check out Slow Loop on Funimation. New episodes every Friday. I really had no problems with the first episode of this show, so I'm giving Slow Loop a giant heart-shaped piñata filled with all your favorite candy out of 10. Finally, we have Akebi's sailor uniform, a slice of life in a school setting, and it's my personal favorite on today's list. This anime is about a young girl named Akebi-chan who is super excited she got into the same prestigious private middle school that her mother went to. But she's also excited because she gets to wear a brand new handmade sailor uniform, which is not only the same kind her mother wore, but it's also the same kind her favorite idol wears during performances. Akebi-chan is hoping it will give her the confidence she needs to make lots of friends at her new school. The only problem is she finds out at the entrance ceremony that the school's official uniform has changed to blazers instead. This show is incredible for multiple reasons. I mean, the art alone reminded me of some of the most gorgeous anime films ever made. I'm talking classics like Makoto Shinkai's Your Name and 5 centimeters per second. I know it might not actually be on the same level as those god-tier films, but the fact that the art in this show reminded me of that standard of quality should be enough to tell you it's doing something right. There is another aspect that reminds me of classic anime films though, something I rarely see in week-to-week shows, and that is the type of story that is unflinchingly true to life. Akebi's sailor uniform doesn't shy away from the private, vulnerable moments we as the audience would normally never see, while still maintaining the proper levels of respect, purity, and wholesomeness which elevate it into the realm of high art. I'm sure everyone likes to think highly of their own taste in anime, and I'm not immune to that either. But I know I'm not the only one who's gotten sick of seeing all the self-insert power fantasy, harem with no effort, copy-paste generic anime that have been coming out in recent years. Which is exactly why I'm so happy when I find hidden gems like the one we're talking about now. This is the kind of show that reminds me anime can still be an art form when it wants to be, and it helps to restore my faith in the medium I fell in love with as a kid. In my humble opinion, this first episode was perfect, so I'm giving Akebi's sailor uniform 10 full heart containers from your favorite video game out of 10. Alright guys, time for a bonus section I like to call Honorable Mentions Rapid Fire. These are shows I just couldn't get to, or shows in their second or more season which most people already know about. First up, we have Demon Slayer. Everybody in the world loves Demon Slayer. The film is still the highest grossing Japanese animated film of all time, beating out the likes of Spirited Away. The current Entertainment District arc started airing in December, which means this week's episode was episode 5. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything. I'm just here to tell you the double-length first episode of this arc was amazing and felt like an extension of the film. The animation and music are still top-notch, so if you somehow haven't seen it yet, go check out Demon Slayer, available on nearly every streaming platform. On to the next one. This week we have Season 2, Episode 1 of How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. This show continues to be a solid 8 out of 10 for fans who enjoy protagonists that solve their problems with tactics and strategy. The main character is running multiple kingdoms through intelligence and skill, not just because of plot armor. I remember when I first scrolled past this anime, I thought it looked boring and generic, but I was wrong. So if you want to see Protag-kun use their brains instead of their brawn, go watch How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom, available on Funimation and Hulu. Saturday, January 7th, we got the start of Season 3 for Teasing Master Takagi-san. I have not seen this show, and I didn't have time to watch 2 whole seasons beforehand, so unfortunately I had to skip it this week. Hopefully I can get caught up and include Season 3 in the next episode of This Week in Anime. Hey, did you know The Irregular at Magic High School got an hour and 11-minute prequel special which aired on December 31st? I haven't seen the show, but if you're a fan, you might want to look into this. Finally, we have World's End Harem, and oh man, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this one, because what can I really say? It's a boundary pushing ecchi with a lot of content, quote unquote, so you already know if you're going to watch it or not. Just be aware that the official version on Crunchyroll is heavily censored, and we're moving on to the end of the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you have a moment, I just want to say one last thing here to kind of wrap up the show. I really want this new year to be a new positive chapter in my life, and so far I think starting this channel and making this video has been the best decision I could have made. I've never written a script before, I've never recorded commentary or edited video either, and it was a lot of work. So if you enjoyed the video, it would mean the world to me if you could give it a like before you go. Let me know in the comments which new show is your favorite so far, and let me know which show you're most hyped for this winter season. I'll be recapping This Week in Anime every single week from now on, plus more in-depth reviews and analysis content. So subscribe and hit the bell, that way you don't miss any of the amazing videos I have planned. Alright guys, that's about it for now. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.